The marble halls of the billionaire's mansion echoed with silence, broken only by the sound of luggage wheels dragging across the floor. Another maid, leaving her face pale, her eyes lowered. She had lasted barely 3 weeks like the others before. The billionaire stood at the top of the staircase, his voice cold as stone. "You are dismissed." He turned away without a second glance. The staff whispered in corners, afraid to speak too loud. 7 maids in 2 months, all gone. Humiliation and fear were all that lingered behind. The billionaire wore his pride like armor, never noticing the cracks it left in the lives of others. But one evening, everything changed. He returned home late. The sound of laughter drifting from the living room, not warm laughter, but sharp, mocking laughter. He followed it and froze at the sight before him. His young son stood with a glass of juice in hand, glaring at the maid. She had spilled a drop on the carpet, and before she could clean it, his son's voice cut. "Like a knife, do you call this work? You're useless, just like father said." The maid's hands shook as she bent to clean her cheeks, burning with shame. The billionaire's chest tightened, his eyes locked on his son's face, the same arrogance, the same cruelty reflected back at him. For the first time he saw not just a boy imitating, but a mirror of himself. The glass slipped from his son's hand, shattering on the floor. The maid gasped, but before she could move, the billionaire's voice roared, "Stop!" His son jumped, turning wide-eyed at the sound he had never heard from his father. Not anger at him, but something deeper, regret. The billionaire looked at the maid, then back at his son, his heart thundering with the weight of what he had just created. The maid froze on her knees, rag in hand, afraid to move. The boy shrank back, confused by the thunder in his father's voice. The billionaire's chest heaved as he stepped forward, his gaze heavy on his son. "Where did you hear those words?" The boy hesitated, then whispered low, "From you, father. You always say they're useless. You always say they're replaceable." The words struck harder than any blow. His heart clenched, shame crawling up his throat. He had built empires with iron fists, but in that moment he realized the smallest empire, his own home, was already crumbling because of him. The maid's eyes brimmed with tears, but she stayed silent, clutching the rag like a shield. The billionaire lowered himself to one knee, in front of his son, his voice shaking. "Son, look at me." The boy's eyes filled with fear, as if bracing for punishment. But instead the billionaire's hand trembled as he touched his shoulder. "Don't ever speak that way again. Not to her, not to anyone." His son frowned. "But I thought that's how strong men act." The billionaire's throat tightened, his pride shattering. "I was wrong. Strength is not in breaking people, it's in lifting them." His words cracked like glass, but they were real. For the first time, his son saw something in his father he had never seen before: vulnerability. He turned slowly toward the maid, her face streaked with silent tears. For the first time in years, he bowed his head. "I'm sorry," his voice barely above a whisper, but loud enough for the whole house to hear. The room stayed still, as if even the walls were holding their breath. The maid blinked in shock. Never in her life had she imagined the billionaire lowering his head to her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came, only trembling silence. The boy clung to his father's arm, confused, his young voice soft. "Father, why are you saying sorry to her?" The billionaire's eyes burned as he looked at his son. "Because I was wrong. I thought money made me greater than others, but I see now it only made me smaller." His hand tightened on the boy's shoulder, and he guided his gaze to the maid. Look at her. She works harder in a day than I do in a week. She deserves respect, not insults. The boy swallowed his pride, mimicking the man he once thought invincible. He turned to the maid, his cheeks red. I'm sorry. His small words wavered, but the sincerity made her tears fall harder. She placed the rag down and whispered, "Thank you," in a voice barely heard, yet heavy enough to fill the room. The billionaire's chest ached as he realized this was the lesson his son would remember. Not the boardroom victories, not the cold orders shouted across marble halls, but the moment a man chose humility over pride. He straightened his back, looking around the room, at the remaining staff who had gathered silently watching their master undone. From this day forward, he said, steady but firm, no one under my roof will be treated as less than family. Anyone who cannot live by that truth will not live here at all. The billionaire walked to the table where the termination letters for the staff still lay, unsigned remnants of his old self. He picked them up one by one and tore them in half, letting the pieces fall to the floor. The sound was soft, but it thundered. Through the room, the staff gasped, unable to believe their eyes. He turned back to the maid, who still stood, trembling, her hands clasped as if ready to be dismissed again. His voice softened. You will not leave this house, not because you need this job, but because we need you. You have held this home together while I was too blind to see it. Today that changes. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, Sir, I don't know what to say. He shook his head. Don't thank me. I should be thanking you. He looked down at his son, whose small fingers clutched his hand tighter. Father, will you remember this tomorrow? The billionaire's lips curved faintly, but his eyes were wet. I will remember this for the rest of my life. And so will you. The boy turned to the maid once more, repeating with more strength, This time I am sorry. She bent down, touched his cheek, and smiled through her tears. You will grow into a better man than your father was yesterday. The billionaire's chest broke open, Atty. Her words, but instead of pain, he felt something lighter, something he hadn't carried in years. Hope. His empire had nearly cost him his soul, but in that living room he reclaimed it, not with wealth, but with humility. If this story moved you, share it so others never forget that one selfless act can rewrite a destiny in ways no one sees coming.